Hey, welcome back. Today we're looking at Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, the final section in which Sir Gawain faces the Green Knight. And so we come to the portion in which Sir Gawain must head out from the very comfortable castle and face off with the Green Knight. And this time it's Sir Gawain's turn to get his neck chopped by an axe. Sir Gawain has shown himself to be courageous and to be faithful to his word in coming back to meet the Green Knight. However, he did break his word while meeting with the lady in the castle, receiving from her the green girdle, which supposedly gives one protection from harm. And because he didn't give that gift back to the master of the house, he's failed in his word already. And so he dresses himself up, he says his goodbyes, he rides out on Gringolet, and he's led away by a servant who leads him towards the Green Chapel. However, as they get close to the Green Chapel, the servant stops, too afraid to go on, and offers Gawain another option, a way out. "There's something I should like to share with you, sir, because upon my life, you're a lord that I love, so if you value your health, you'll hear my advice. The place you head for holds a hidden peril. In that wilderness lives a wild man, the worst in the world. He's brooding and brutal and loves bludgeoning humans. He's more powerful than any person alive on this planet, and 4 times the figure of any fighting knight in King Arthur's castle, Hector included." And so after the servant describes the horror of the Green Knight, how he murders everyone who gets close, the servant offers Gawain an alternative. "For God's sake, travel an alternative track, ride another road, and be rescued by Christ. I'll head off home, and with hand on heart I shall swear by God and all his good saints, and all earthly holiness, and other such oaths, that your secret is safe, and not a soul will know that you fled in fear from the fellow I described." The servant says, "If you run away, I promise I will never let the secret out. Everyone will think you went to the Green Chapel." Is Gawain tempted by this path of cowardice? Not at all. It's a very obvious path. Gawain almost seems a little disgusted with the servant, and he also looks very bold as he says, I would never shrink from a fight like this, no matter what. However, there is an irony here. Gawain is so intent on keeping his word to the Green Knight that he forgets that he already failed to keep his word to the master of the house. Not only that, but the reason that he failed to keep his word was because he was afraid for his life. He took the green girdle specifically to protect himself and to avoid being killed. And so what the servant offers him is really no different than what he's already done. And yet he thinks he is so much above this decision. There's a distinct irony about it. And so Gawain continues alone and arrives at the Green Chapel, where he finds it to be a very disturbing place. There is again that tension that we've noticed all throughout this book. The Green Chapel does not look like a chapel, a place of holiness, but rather like a devil's den. And almost as soon as he arrives, he hears this scraping sound of someone sharpening an axe. Gawain follows the sound and finds the Green Knight preparing for the contest. And so Gawain presents himself to the knight and says, "Here I am, I have kept my word, I'm ready to stretch out my neck and let you chop it." The knight is the same gruff, mocking person he met before, and now as Gawain stretches out his neck, the knight swings the axe, but he stops it before he gets close to Gawain's neck. This fake swing causes Gawain to flinch, as most of us would if we had an axe swinging for our neck. And the knight mocks him for this, but Gawain says, "Swing again, I won't flinch this time." And so the knight swings a second time, and this time again he stops the axe. But this time Gawain does not flinch. Gawain, however, is getting very irritated at the way the knight keeps hesitating and teasing him. He wants this to be over and done. And so finally the knight takes a third stroke. This time he does hit Gawain, but only a glancing blow. He cuts Gawain's neck, enough to spray some blood, but not enough to actually do him serious injury. And at that point, Gawain jumps up, pulls out his sword, and says, "Okay, you've had your stroke, the game is done." Gawain is delighted, somehow he survived this. But the knight, instead of attacking as Gawain seems to expect, simply leans on his axe and looks at Gawain. Listen to the way it describes the knight looking at Gawain. "The warrior steps away and leans on his weapon, props the handle in the earth and slouches on the head, and studies how Gawain is standing his ground, bold in his bearing, brave in his actions, armed and ready. in his heart he admires him. There's almost a paternalness about the way the Green Knight is looking at Gawain now, as a son who's been put to the test and shown himself true. The knight then begins to speak and reveals the entire plot. The Green Knight actually is the master of the house, in an enchanted form. And this entire thing was a test for Sir Gawain and for the Knights of King Arthur. He presented himself to the knights in order to test them, using the magic of the fairy Morgan, who's the old lady in the castle. All of this is part of her manipulation and testing. And so when the lady of the house was tempting Gawain, it was all at the master of the house's bidding. And the first 2 days in which Gawain's honesty and chastity protected him corresponded to the first 2 strokes of the axe, which did not hurt him. However, because he fell to temptation on the 3rd day, he got part of the stroke. He didn't fall completely into temptation, but only into the temptation for self-preservation. And so the knight excuses him further. He says that was a trivial reason to fall. And yet, Gawain is ashamed. He recognizes his own failure. Not just his failure against the master of the house, but his failure against his own virtue. Although Sir Gawain first throws the girdle on the ground, giving it back to the knight offers for him to keep it. And ultimately Sir Gawain does keep it, not because it's valuable, but because of the lesson it has taught him. And he's going to wear it from now on to remember not to be prideful, and remind him of the mistake that he made so that he won't make it again. The knight then invites him back to the castle so that they can have a big party together, and they'll all be his friends now. But Sir Gawain is ready to return. He's no longer wanting to go back into the castle. And he recognizes how he was made weak by the lady of the house, just as many other great men have been in the past. Adam and Samson and Solomon and David. So Gawain returns on the journey to the court of King Arthur, where he presents himself and recognizes his failure and confesses. This entire story continues to talk about temptation, failure, and confession. And it's Gawain's strength of goodness, but ultimately also his recognition of his own failure, and his confession and turning away from his failure that makes him strong. And at the end, the entire court of King Arthur decides to wear the green girdle, so that they may also learn the lesson along with Gawain. And so we come to the end of the story. Thanks for exploring this poem with me and for watching. You can click to subscribe or watch another video, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.